Good evening, everyone. Hope that you're doing well. Thank you for coming out to the Pickens County Republican Party meeting tonight. I'm Elliot Kelly. I'm the EC for Pickens County. Our chairman, Rick Tate, would have been here tonight, except his father's funeral was this afternoon, and his cousin passed away, so he's at a visitation there right now. So if you'll be in prayer for his family. But we're very excited to have both Sheriff Rick Clark as well as Solicitor Walt Wilkins here with us tonight. We're excited to hear about how that they've been working together to solve issues for Pickens County and the surrounding areas. David, if you'll come up and lead us in prayer, and then Daniel, if you'll be ready to lead us in the pledge, we'll go ahead and get tonight's meeting started.
Let us pray. Father, we thank you for your love, your mercy, and kindness. We thank you, Lord, for this opportunity to stand up for our country, our voices to be heard. We thank you, Lord, for people that have gathered together here to make our community a better place. We just ask your blessings, and we thank you for all you do in the wonderful and powerful name of Jesus Christ.
Thank you. And Daniel, if you'll lead us in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance, flag, United States of America, to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, justice for all.
And Sheriff Clark, if you're ready.
He said I could take this off. As my wife says, I wiggle too much, so I'll be moving around. It's great to be here tonight. Good to see turnout and talk with some people and tell you what we're doing at the sheriff's office and what we do with Walt over there. We present him some interesting cases a lot of times, but we've got a great working relationship. We can call each other at any time we need, and especially over the past, I'd say 2 years, mainly through 2 or 3 years, we've really worked on our courthouse operations of what we're doing as sheriff's office and also what Walt's team is doing. And he's got a good Clemson graduate in there now, so we hit it off. And that may sound funny, but it gives us that option to talk bluntly to each other. What do we need? What do we got to do? We don't have to do that a lot, but what we do is a lot of working together. How can we improve the courthouse, the way it runs? And what that means is getting people processed through the process to get them into jail. And I was looking at a webinar today about what national people are doing, state and local, and the statistics when they got to court, they're looking at what slows down a court system. And they had all the percentages somehow they kept of how many times lawyers didn't show up, how many times cases weren't ready. You can walk front door. And all these things that can fall apart. Is the lawyer not show up? Or did the defendant change his mind? All those type things fall into kind of the efficiency of a court system. So, but over the past few years, we've been increasing that, and I think it's going well. So main thing is I'll leave all the solicitor bragging to Walt and get to the weeds on that. But we've got a good staff there, and things are moving forward, and we're real happy from where we've been several years ago. I think we're made leaps and bounds of what we're doing. But one of the problems that we have in Pickens County is our jail. And as you've heard over and over again, probably since the first day I came in, y'all have heard me talk about we need a jail. And it's just not we need one because we want it to look pretty. We need one because it's a serious problem that we have. And let me give you some stats just right off. Each Department of Corrections, we have to answer to them on a lot of things. So they determine how many people you can have your capacity in the jail. We're rated in Pickens County for 93 people. That's women, females, everything. So we're rated for 93. A month and a half ago, we had 253 in our jail. And we had so many then, we had to put some out at the stockade. Now just think that's not 253 people where it should be 93 in a nice jail. This is where this jail is coming up on its 50th birthday. So I'll start off with pictures and put it around. We'll talk about a new one. And not to overdo the picture, I've got one. So what you're looking at this picture is the building maintenance crew of Pickens County, and I'll pass it around, digging through the concrete. This is one of our cells. There's cells on that side, and that's a table in the middle. So what you're seeing is they're digging through the concrete floor and down for the sewer system. You think about a jail being 50 years old, close to it, you think about the brick and the mortar and all that, but it's the stuff that we take for granted every day is the utilities and all stuff. So they're having to replace the whole sewer system. This was a couple years ago, throughout the whole jail, because it wasn't just bad, it was gone. And literally, it was gone. There was just a hole there. So those type things that we see on a daily basis. So what you don't think about a lot of times, okay, so in this cell, which should have about 6 in it, usually has 14 or 15. Now, if 14 or 15 of us in a size, we'd be pretty mad at each other. But just think of the people who are criminals. They haven't been charged yet, a lot of them, but criminals, and may have a criminal history in here. Just think about what our officers have to do to control people like that. And so the main thing that I've been fighting for jail, and we're moving ahead, is our detention officers. They're the unsung heroes that we have at the sheriff's office because they put up with these people and these conditions every day. So and that's what the new jail is all about. So pass this around, and you can just this just gives you a snapshot of what we're having to put up with. So what I'll do is pass around. I was going to set up my PowerPoint, but I didn't go to all that trouble. I've been every week flying my personal drone around and kind of give an update every week of the progress of the jail and send it out to all my staff and all that. So what you see on this first one is the jail. I'm probably the only sheriff or anybody who's ever bragged on the construction company of a jail. They're actually on time, despite the rain we've had over the past few months. And they're great to work with. They're changing things if we need to, updating. And so it's been amazing. So there's the jail from a bird's eye view. And that's a rendering of what it'll look like coming outside. Both. I'll explain that in just a second. So, why do we need a new jail? It's what you saw there of what we're having to put up with. 50 years and when that jail was built, it was right at capacity then. But 50 years of the degradation and all that's been in the jail, and the lawsuits that will generate out of that, it is tremendous because we're paying a lot. Even if it's a frivolous lawsuit, it has to go through the lawyer. And let me give you the detailed, I'll use this as an example. Let me give you the detailed thing that you have to do to file a lawsuit. You have to take a piece of paper and this pen, and you have to write it out and give it to, a lot of times they're federal. That is the process for a lawsuit. They can handwrite their own lawsuits and send it to either, sometimes they try local court or federal court. And there's a lot of federal procedures that give them ability just to handwrite that. They sent about 20 of them got a grievance letter up and sent it to SLED last 2-3 weeks ago, and they gave it back. SLED sent the letter to me and said, here's what they wrote, do with what you want, because SLED doesn't fool with that. But those are type things of why we as taxpayers need to upgrade a jail because of the tremendous liability that we're in right now. And having that many people in that old position and all that is very dangerous for our people and for those, because even though they've been charged with a crime, they still have their rights, and they still have all the rights that do inside a jail, so we have to make sure for their safety too. I'll give you another quick example of that. We had a guy who came in. He was Mr. Tough. He had his gang stuff. He had his tats up here and all that, and he was super tough. He's a little too small to be a real thug, but he's trying. So he got in a cell for it was actually 3 minutes before they beat him down. So that cost us money because we have to take him to the hospital and get all that. And they did serious damage to some of his upper extremities. And that reason that happened because we put too many people in that cell because that's all that we have. So those are, as taxpayers, are things a lot of times you wouldn't think about, because I know y'all don't think about being inside a jail a lot of times, but that's what we had to think about as taxpayers. you won't be able to see it, but this is the back of the jail. And hey there. And this is the back of where really there'll be rec yards right on the outside. And that brings up another point that you probably don't care about the jail, but right now we have like 1 and 1.5 rec yards for all those people. So we have to physically go out there and move them out into a rec yard and then close it back up or monitor it. These will be, the rec yard is connected to each pod. And what you were talking about, how the jail is going to be laid out inside, I should have printed another picture, but we'll have different pods. Right now we have trouble quantifying and putting people in the right area because of what are they bad people? Are they just in over a DUI overnight or something that's not as bad as murder? But right now, that we can't put them in the right places the way they should be categorized by state law, as a matter of fact, or Department of Corrections standards. So what our new jail will do will give us the ability to put people in the places, all the decent people in one, all the hard criminals in others. We have specialized cells for people who are very dangerous or sick or some type of communicable disease. Those are the type of things we just don't have now. So we can either pay for this jail by taxes or lawsuits. We'll have to see which one. But this is the last one I'm passing around. If you look at this, it kind of looks like a triangle. And what you're looking at, this is one of the control rooms. We have about 5 control rooms in here because of the see out of the pod. And this was a couple of weeks ago, but what you're looking at is a triangle room, like we'd be looking at it now. And it's actually going to be 2 pods. Out of this one control room, you can see people on the left and on the right from the same control room. Much more visibility. Right now, we can't see inside of a lot of our cells because it's just there's an old camera in there and all that. This is going to give us a lot of ability to control people better. But one of the things that I've been harping on for a long time and aggravating him about too, is we're trying to build, is this release and forget that we're doing across the nation really is not working. So we've tried to slowly but surely get grants and stuff of where maybe we can change some people inside our jail and not just it be wasted time. And what am I talking about? Kind of a 3-pronged stool. It's mental health, which we see has exploded off of the charts, the people we see on mental health. Second is behavioral health, mainly addictions. And you know the addictions are getting worse because the drugs are getting worse. We have drugs now that one speck that you can't see can kill you. So, and also the third leg is going to be our religious part of it, of where we hopefully, if we put those 3 together, get people dried up off drugs and get them mental health, and also maybe if they want to, it'd be up to them, have a base that have a relationship with God when they come out of there. We think we may can change some lives. You say, well, why should a jail be doing that? It's called recidivism rate. If we're not doing it, and it's kind of, I just talk about the secular part of it, but me as a Christian, it's my mission. Maybe, just maybe, I'm in the right place to do this. So I want somebody to come back a year later and be dried up with a job and being a productive citizen, just to stop by and say, hey, look what I've done, somebody coming out of this program. So we're got some grants in for mental health, behavioral health. The federal government's been doing a lot of good things on how to reduce recidivism rate. So we're looking forward to that. But right now, the things I've just shown you, we have one room in our jail that where lawyers meet with their clients, where mental health meets with their clients, where behavioral health meets with their clients, where there's other things. And so it's hard. Imagine 200-something people and you're trying to get what all they need in one room. And that a lot of times slows him down because the public defender can't get FaceTime with his people and get them ready for court. So it's a complicated web, but we're keeping our head above water, and we appreciate you taxpayers, and we want to make this jail an investment in our county, an investment in our future, not just a big thing around our neck that we're not running right. So we appreciate everything. Quick questions, but save the hard ones for Walt.
Drug addiction problem, meth and the fentanyl, I guess, now coming in, that kind of stuff. how does Pickens County compare with other counties, maybe just around us or in South Carolina? I know it's bad. It's bad all over the state, but are we worse or better or?
It's unique how drugs get into places. Our main thing in Pickens County is meth. And we think our users, probably percentage-wise, is the same as Greenville. They're just a lot bigger. But in Greenville, you're probably seeing more drugs and the fentanyls, the opioids coming in, but meth is still our number one fight. But it's also, how it can change is inside of Pickens County, Clemson City in that area is totally different because of the university and what the preferred drugs are down there. So it's really hard but still meth is our number one fight. No ifs, ands, and buts about it.
So one other thing is, how many repeat offenders do we see? A lot. Do
you have any stats on repeat offenders? It's huge. I mean, it's just overwhelming. It's the same people over and over and over again.
That's kind of what I thought.
Yeah, 60, 70%. Depends on your time frame. They're back in several times, and that's why what we talk about mental health, behavioral health. We know what we're doing now is not what we can do, and that's what we think that's worth a try. And there's been some super success in really intervening in their lives and give them the ability to get out of that mess.
I applaud what you're doing, and I just like to add one other thing, that what needs to happen in Pickens County, and everybody's heard me say this over and over, we've got to have some opportunity for these people. Mm-hmm. Because when we don't have opportunity for them, this is what happens. And then you see it, and they get caught up in it, and it's over and over and over. And our county council and Pickens County really needs to start concentrating on the economic development here. It just seems like nobody's doing anything.
Yeah. Well, Chuck Wright introduced something to support him, and we're going to try to do that, of where maybe our sentence people, instead of picking up trash, or we got plenty, let's get them working with King Asphalt or somebody like that and get them a steady income that part of that would come back to take care of themselves. But they have a job, at least a resume when they come out, or they're a good worker. So those are type things we're going to try to do and working in this system also.
Good evening, Sheriff. I'm John. I'm new down here.
Yes, sir.
I spoke a second ago. Now you're saying that you're going to try and quote counsel, which isn't your job, but it is now, which kind of stinks. But you'll have private rooms for such like that, and
yeah.
Now, is there a chaplain in your facility at all? Just wondering.
Yes.
Okay, that's good. Just
we have two tracks on our chaplains. We have 4 great ones who really work with our road units and all that. They ride with the officers and all that.
Really?
Yep.
I didn't know that. That's
we got
neat.
one chaplain. He went ahead and got his reserve credentials, so he can do reserve. And then as our new building comes together, we've got a great guy, Mr. Moss, down in Central. He's probably going to be our head detention chaplain.
Yeah, I understand that. Yep. Cool.
So,
and good job good luck on whomever the gentleman is finding jobs and getting these persons out there.
Yep.
For work duties and and getting them jobs like that. Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Any other questions for the sheriff? If not, we'll hand it over to the solicitor.
Thank you, Sheriff. So I'm Walt Wilkins. I'm your solicitor, and I've been your solicitor for about 8 years now. And I tell you, it's been what a great working relationship we have with the Pickens County Sheriff's Office, but also with the municipalities as well, with Liberty and Central and Easley and Clemson. We all really work well together. We meet once a month and go over all the cases that are going on, and it's just been really good. In the solicitor's office, it's a little bit different. So I'm trying to sustain convictions on all the work that they're bringing us, and they're doing a really good job bringing us. As you can see, they've had to build a new jail. So we know that there's plenty of business they're bringing us, but also our goal is I'm the only business in town that wants less of it. Because if I have less of it, that means y'all are doing better. People that I serve are doing better. So the role of the solicitor has kind of expanded over the last decade, and we've seen a lot of different things occur inside the office. The office has grown since I've been solicitor. We now have 10 lawyers that handle and prosecute all the cases that are brought to us by law enforcement. About almost 30 staff to handle all the cases. It's about 3,500 warrants that are coming in every year. And we're processing 3,500 warrants as well every single year through the courthouse. So we've got to have court time, we've got to have judges, we've got to have court reporters, we've got to have all those things for court to go on. We have to have defense attorneys because everybody's got to have an attorney when they come into court or it slows the case down. And of course we want to move them in a relatively fast manner. We don't want the cases sitting around, folks sitting in the county jail waiting on their case to be adjudicated because that costs taxpayer money. So there's a lot of things going on to sort of keeping the wheels of justice going that we actually work on. But all the cases that come in, we get any kind of case you can think, we get it. If there's an armed robbery, we're going to get it. DUIs, seconds and above. We also do all the magistrate's court prosecution as well. So anything that's a magistrate court level, our prosecutors are there in that court every single time. It's namely property crimes less than $2,000 and driving under the influence crimes that we handle over there. But we have a prosecutor there trying all those cases. So officers, back in the day, officers used to try their own cases in magistrate's court. And they would go up against an officer would go up against a defense attorney. And the DUI law has gotten so complicated that you have to be a skilled attorney to be able to prosecute the case. It's actually one of the most difficult cases to sustain a conviction on. The murder statute's half a page, the DUI statute's 22 pages. So there's all these things in the DUI statute that our lawyers are versed on, trained on to prosecute DUI, sustain a conviction. And it really comes down to the videotaping section. Law enforcement is now required, when they pull someone over they believe may have been drinking and driving, they have to get their camera out and they have to film all the field sobriety tests perfectly. They can't cut their knees off or that case could be dismissed by the judge, and it says it in the statute. So they are now turned into human tripods or Hollywood producers to effectuate the arrest. And so it's put a very difficult burden on law enforcement and taking on DUIs as well. But we're there in magistrate's court trying those cases every week here in Pickens to keep the flow of cases going. We also have a myriad of different cases. We're taking on 3 major issues here. The most difficult issue that we take on, it has about, I don't say 85% of all our cases are related to this one thing, and that's drugs and alcohol. Drugs and alcohol is the #1 problem we have in this country. It's the #1 problem that we have in Pickens County because almost all crime somehow some nexus to drugs and alcohol. Either they're a drug dealer and they make a living selling drugs, that's what they do for a living, or they are on drugs and their mind's not working correctly and they're doing things they wouldn't normally do. And that's when they get arrested by law enforcement and we end up having to house them in the jail, prosecute them, send them down to the South Carolina Department of Corrections. Or they're not on drugs, but they want to be, but they don't have any money to buy the drugs. So what do they have to, where do they go get the money? Well, they commit fraud, they steal, they go into your garage and they steal your trailer or whatever it is you have in there, and they use that to go get drugs on it. And so that's probably where we're fighting the biggest battle because, as I said, we want to reduce the amount of cases that are coming in to Pickens, to my office, and that law enforcement is having to deal with. But population's growing, and drugs are rampant in the country and in our county. The main reason drugs are so rampant, they always have been, it's increased a lot for 2 reasons. One, we have a very porous border. Our border's open, and people are walking back and forth all the time, and with that comes the smuggling of illegal drugs as well as humans. And those are the 2 things that are being smuggled into Pickens County as well. And so all those drugs are being housed in Atlanta, and then they're brought up by people who want to engage in the drug dealing business. Then people are getting out of their mind using these drugs, and they're committing these crimes. The worst drug that we have, it used to be when I started, methamphetamine was the #1 problem that we were dealing with here. And it was when you had the ability to get pseudoephedrine. So pseudoephedrine was easily bought at the CVS, the Walgreens, and people figured out they could go on YouTube or internet and figure out how to cook methamphetamine and then use it to get high, but they had to have the pseudoephedrine to do it. South Carolina has done a great job in trying to keep pseudoephedrine out of the hands of those that want to use it illegally, because pseudoephedrine has a medicinal purpose. It's a legitimate drug for people who have sinuses and those kind of issues. So it is needed by the public, but people get large quantities of it and then cook it into an illegal drug, and it makes you act very different than you normally would. So that was what we were seeing a lot of. They were cooking this methamphetamine, which is extremely dangerous. These labs would blow up oftentimes, and they were also very toxic. So when law enforcement would go find a meth lab somewhere, it was a DHEC problem because it was now an environmental hazard, and they had to pay somebody to come clean up the site. And so this was happening over and over. So they're cooking it in their kitchen or on their back porch or whatnot. It was creating a major problem for law enforcement. Fortunately, we've gotten out of the methamphetamine epidemic, and because the pseudoephedrine is now not readily available. You cannot get the pseudoephedrine that you need to make the quantities. But as a result, the cartels down below the southern border who are in the drug business have decided that, well, we'll just make it down south of the border and we'll just bring it over like we do everything else. But they also decided that, heroin made from opium is a pretty good drug too. And they decided, we'll bring that over and see if there's a market for that. And they decided that there was, and they got together and decided, this heroin business is going pretty good, but we can get this fentanyl, this chemical made up. You can't grow it anywhere, you make it up, but it acts like heroin, and we can mix it with our heroin, and we can double our load, meaning I can take this much heroin, add fentanyl, and now I have this much illegal substance. Because the fentanyl you can buy in large quantities by the gallon, by the ton, from overseas and have it shipped into a foreign country. They mix it up and they bring it over here into the United States and sell it. But what they didn't realize was that fentanyl is very dangerous. It's extremely dangerous. It's used in a lot of third world countries as an anesthetic for surgeries. It does have a slight use in some hospitals under very strict circumstances for people who need medical care in certain instances because it sedates you. But if you don't dose it correctly, it will kill you. It will kill you very quickly. And so what's happening is when they mix up the heroin that they sell on the streets, they don't know how much fentanyl they're getting and how much heroin they're getting. So in somebody who is using heroin, they're getting more fentanyl than heroin, but they don't know it, and it causes their heart to stop. And so now law enforcement is now equipped with a drug called Narcan. Narcan is a drug that revives you from that overdose. And Sheriff, I don't know how many times y'all are having to use that these days, but I imagine, the Narcan is once every month somebody's overdosing and they got to go use Narcan to revive that person and send them to the ER. And there's also individuals dying, people in our community that are dying as a result of this drug that is now in our communities. So we're fighting that battle, the opium battle, left and right. And I need to mention that a lot of the opium addicts started with a prescription from a doctor. And we now know this, that the Percocet or the Oxycontins, these drugs that numb you because your shoulder injury or your knee injury, and they prescribe you too many, everybody's body is different. And so you may take pills for 1 or 2 days, and you're fine. Somebody else may take pills for 1 or 2 days, and then their body has an appetite for it, and they want to keep it. And that's where we've seen 1 in 4 folks who are addicted become addicted because of the prescription drugs that they were given. So I just tell that as a public service announcement and warning. Be careful about those things. Any opium-based drug can be extremely dangerous and needs to be used very sensitively. So we're fighting the drug epidemic as much as we can, and what we're doing though is we're fighting a lot of the symptoms of the drug epidemic, because the symptoms of the addiction that we're seeing is causing the crimes that the sheriff and others are having to investigate and incarcerate. As well in the solicitor's office though, we're doing extremely well. We fight for court time is the other thing that we do, because the more court we can have, the more people we can process out of the jail. And we've got to keep people moving out of the county jail, because if you've seen the pictures, that it's in disrepair. And we are subjecting the sheriff and the county to lawsuits because of that. And so they're quickly building this new jail, which will be able to house everybody. And then we're trying to get them out so that we can get them to the Department of Corrections if their crime determines that that's where they need to go. So we can keep them out of Pickens. And we're doing that through asking for more court time is what we do. And we're just working well with the sheriff's office. And we've also gotten additional public defenders to help move the cases along, which has been a great asset. And that's one thing you don't think, wow, the prosecutor doesn't want more defense lawyers out there. But unfortunately, in the wheels of justice, everybody has a part, and you have to have everybody there for the system to move forward. And so that's what we've done, and it's really worked out well, and we're moving cases extremely. We have a current docket. I would say it's as current as we can be based on the case, because our burden as prosecutors is beyond a reasonable doubt. That's our burden. We have to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt, and it's a great standard. I'm a big proponent of that standard, because if I was charged with a crime, I would want that standard as well, because it's up to the state to prove that that standard, and that's what we have to do every day. And law enforcement helps us do that on a regular basis. And finally, the other issues that we're dealing with, and I mention this because we start October next month, and October is Domestic Violence. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Week. And that's one thing that it can be an extremely difficult crime to prosecute, because when the government comes inside your household, which is what domestic violence is, because there may be abuse going on, it can be a difficult thing. And so we really work really hard with service providers to help empower the victim. Because victims who are subjected to lots of domestic abuse, it can be difficult to get out of that relationship. They're tied financially, they're tied with children, they're tied through family. So it can be a difficult situation, and the government is there prosecuting the person that you may have been living with at that time. So it creates a unique dynamic for the prosecution to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. We have an obligation to protect that person as well from any abuse. And the last thing we want to see is the abuse get to the point where somebody is severely injured or murdered. And that's what keeps me up at night, thinking about those cases there. So one of the things that we do in the solicitor's office as well is the aggressive prosecution that we do, but it's also we try to rehabilitate anybody we can. If I can get a person out of the jail, working, paying taxes, supporting his family, then we're all better off. We're all much better off there. So we do have programs inside the solicitor's office, and that we work with through the sheriff's office and the municipalities to help do that. So we have drug court for those that are addicted, to get them off drugs. We have counseling for anger management to teach people to learn that violence is not how you need to interact with each other. So we're trying to do these educational programs that are extremely important to us and to the success of the solicitor's office and to our communities in healing who we can that is available along the way. So that's been important as well. So all in all, the solicitor's office is in great shape. We have a fantastic staff. Baker Cleveland is in charge of my Pickens office, and the 9 other lawyers, and a wonderful staff. We have great judges. Our clerk of court, Pat Welburn, does a fantastic job keeping the courtroom and the courthouse available to us. He has allowed us extra space as we've grown through the years as well, and it's been a great working relationship. Finally, the other issue that we really face, so we have Clemson University's right up the street, and so we have all the college kids in town, and so they create another unique dynamic for football games, law enforcement, but we also have, if we've seen on the hearings today and under Kavanaugh, that the allegations of criminal sexual conduct or sexual assault. And those cases do come into our office, and we do have those in our office. And one thing that the sheriff and I are very passionate about is protecting our children and protecting those against sexual assault, for sure. But definitely with our children. So with the Clemson campus there, we see some of those type crimes being reported. We investigate them and, of course, move them through the system as needed on a case-by-case basis, as well as the crimes against the children. And so for the crimes against children, what we do is I have special prosecutors that are trained, that continue training on those, that go out and prosecute those cases where children are the victim of particular crimes. And those are hard. Those are the hardest cases that we see and get, because when you have a young victim that has to come and testify to a horrific event in their life in court, because that's what's going to be required to prove the case, then it creates a tough situation for everybody, because the last thing you want to do is have a young child have to come relive a horrific moment. But we have a staff, we have law enforcement, we have training, mutual training together that we utilize, that we go into action and put these cases together so that we can get justice for those children as well. It's extremely important. So all in all, the Solicitor's Office is in great shape. We deal with a lot of issues. The issues that you see about on TV, they come into the Solicitor's Office as well. If it's immigration, we're dealing with it. If it's crimes against children, we're dealing with it. If it's drugs, we're dealing with it. So, we are dealing with a lot of the challenges that the nation is facing right here in Pickens, and we fight it in the courtroom, is a lot of what we do in the Solicitor's Office. And honestly, at the end of the day, the goal is, if y'all don't know about it, you don't hear about it, we're doing our job, because we're keeping it away from y'all and keeping y'all safe. The goal is go to work, church, vacation, and spend time with your family and do what you need to do. And that's our goal, and that's our promise to you, is that we will continue to do that to the best of our ability. So I appreciate it. Love to take some questions if y'all would like some questions. I'm happy to answer anything you got about the office or issues that y'all see.
Anybody have a question?
Solicitor Wilkins, my name is Regina Looney, and I came here tonight because on November the 19th of 2015, my son was tragically taken from me by a man that I consider to be a nuisance to society because he was a habitual DUI offender. But the night that he was taken from me, my son was taken from me, all of that was overlooked and pushed aside. I lost my son that night. I lost half of my heart that night, and I lost my reason to live. I questioned the South Carolina Highway Patrol as to why this man never faced charges. I was told every lie in the book. I was even told that he was given a field sobriety test. But after obtaining the audio and video from the Highway Patrol, I questioned why the patrolman working the accident turned the DVD off before supposedly giving the subject the field sobriety. And you yourself just said that it was supposed to remain on and it was supposed to be videoed from the knee up. So I began to look deeper into things and find more information, and at that time, I began to call your office, asking for a return phone call from you. I left multiple voicemails for you. I called your secretaries, I called your voicemail, I left them on your voicemail. I left messages asking for just a phone call. Just a few minutes of your time, just to sit down with you and to tell you what I had found out. And just to show you what I had. I just wanted you to listen to me. I called you over and over, multiple times. You never called me back. Why did you not call me back? Did my son's life not matter? Could you not give me 30 minutes of your time?
Ma'am, I'm so sorry for your loss, and I have no idea the pain and suffering your family is feeling, and I sincerely apologize. I am not familiar with your case, and if I didn't call you back, I sincerely apologize. I meet with victims on a monthly basis, weekly basis, daily basis. I meet with hundreds a year,
but that's not good
meeting
enough.
with them.
That's not good enough.
And if you called my office and somebody didn't give me the message, or if somebody didn't return a call from my office, I'd like to know about it, because I have a policy in place that we return all our phone calls within 24 to 48 hours.
You can't sit here and tell me that after multiple phone calls, you didn't get at least one of them. That's not good enough. My son matters.
Absolutely.
And you just said yourself, they broke the law.
And ma'am, I don't know anything about the case, and we
understand
get hundreds of these
but
cases a year,
I
and so I have to
understand
look
that.
at each case individually,
Well,
unfortunately.
my
And
son matters.
if law enforcement doesn't bring us the case, then my office is not involved. See, I can't do anything until law enforcement brings me a charge. I don't charge people. I don't have that authority. I don't have that
Okay.
legal authority.
Okay, I understand, but I'm asking you for your time now.
Sure, absolutely. I'd be happy to
When?
meet with you.
When?
We can meet tomorrow if you'd like.
Okay, what time?
After this is over, be happy to schedule a time with you.
Any other questions? Alan?
I'm going to ask you one, and it's, you referenced it a little while ago, and it's not really local. What is your opinion of the circus that's going on in Washington, D.C., where you have to prove yourself innocent instead of they've got to prove you guilty?
So I haven't been very busy. I haven't been able to watch as much as I would like of the confirmation hearings of Judge Kavanaugh. You know, I worked as the U.S. Attorney in the Department of Justice. I was the U.S. Attorney for South Carolina, so I've been to D.C. a lot. It's a different place than it is here, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to stay here is I'd had enough of D.C. So, you know, it's one of those things. Senate confirmation hearings are interesting things, and it's purely political, in my opinion. It's a political issue that they're dealing with up there. I think Senator Graham became unhinged today on TV, dealing with it. So I can't imagine what's going through. Our standard here is you are innocent until proven guilty, and that's that's the due process clause of the Constitution, and that's what we adhere to here. I think they are trying to hijack that a little bit up there, and about whether somebody's going to be a Supreme Court justice or not, and it's unfortunate that they are playing politics with that, and you know, that it seems that's the case. I think that's what Judge Kavanaugh said in his statement, that it was a circus up there that was going on, and he is the victim of that circus right now. It appears. So they're going to go through that process. We hope they get a vote, and I hope they do get a vote, up or down, and then, you know, we go from there.
I had one question, Solicitor. Some people I know from the Greenville area have been approached about signing a petition for your opponent, and they've been told that, you know, you're a Republican, you need to sign up and support this guy. Well, I came across a Facebook post that I just wanted your reaction to. It actually is from Democrats from Marchant, and it says, quote, "Thank you, Lucas Marchant, for standing strong with the Democrats and James Smith for governor. Those who keep questioning whether we really trust Lucas to be a loyal Democrat since he comes from a Republican family should keep their mouths shut," end quote. And then there's a couple photos attached. Do you have any comments on that?
You know, I'm not going to comment too much on that. You know, I've been a Republican my entire life. I'm the Republican nominee for this position. I adhere to conservative principles, and I always have my entire life. I am tough on crime. I am fight for the unborn anytime that we have a chance in the courtroom, especially when you know, there's a mother who's somebody that's pregnant who's murdered. I am going to fight for the life or as the victim of that unborn, and so you know, I'm really going to focus on my record as the solicitor, the great things that we've done, all the challenges that we've met, growing the office, and you know, just really having a lot of great successes here in Pickens County. I've tried a lot of cases here in Pickens County. It's one of my favorite places to try cases because it's the big courtroom. It's the old courtroom. It's one of my favorites. It's not one of the new ones they've done up, and it's just a fantastic place to fight for victims. And that's one thing that I'm dedicated to do, is fighting for families, fighting for victims, and that's what Republicans do. And it matters. It matters if you're a Republican or Democrat, because it tells you what kind of philosophy you're going to bring to the office. And my conservative principles are going to be certainly tougher on crime, and that's where conservative principles start. And Democrats oftentimes are not that same way. And so you know, that's where I stand, and that's what we'll continue to do in Pickens.
Thank you. Steve? Who wants it first?
Something you just said, I'd like to have a better explanation of. You said that you prosecute folks that murder pregnant mothers because of the impact it has on the child.
Mm-hmm.
Can you help me understand the difference between murdering a mother and it killing the child, and the mother choosing to have the child murdered in a hospital? So why is one prosecutable and the other one not? That's something that doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't seem logical.
Sure, and I agree 100% with you. It's a legal standard versus it's law. So in South Carolina, we will fight as victims' rights is where we find our ability to fight for the unborn. And if it's a viable fetus, it's a child, and it's considered another person who has been murdered if a mother is pregnant. And so, and that's how we consider it as well in the courtroom. As far as the right to terminate a pregnancy, that's the supreme case of Roe v. Wade, and that's where this Kavanaugh stuff is probably coming from. Is that there is a group of people who are worried that he will overturn Roe v. Wade and the legal basis behind it, because many jurists would consider it not on the firmest legal footing as it should be. And so there's a lot of stuff that could be argued there. But from a common sense perspective, I'm not sure the difference either.
Whenever we had all the Attorney General candidates here during primary season, each one of them was asked about what they could do to help fight drugs coming into our country and the drug dealers. And there was one man who came in here, he talked about how he lost a daughter to drug addiction and wanted more done on that. Is there anything that the state can do? I mean, do we need to lean on our lawmakers to tighten up something that would help you and help the sheriff to crack down on drug dealers bringing stuff into South Carolina?
Sure. Yeah, and that's great. So it's a national problem and a local problem, and they're all connected. So the first problem is border security. And I gave a speech a couple of weeks ago on border security in the immigration system that we currently have. And border security is number one. If we know who's coming and going across our southern border, then we can do a much better job stopping the flow of the illegal substances that are coming through. They detain 1,200 people a day along the border, a day. And that's just what they detain. That's just what they're able to grab along the way, and everything that they're moving across there. So that will help minimize that. Secondly, we have to attack the drugs from both sides. We have to help those that have become addicted to not be addicted anymore the best way that we can. But we also have to be strong on drug dealers. And that's what we've done with the sheriff's office here, is we focus on those who are in the business of drug dealing, and we lock them up as best we can. The legislature back in 2010 did change some laws, and it was not laws that I would have voted for had I been in the legislature, because it decreased some of the penalties for certain drug crimes, because a study came out that said over 50% of all the individuals in prison were related to drug-related crimes, and it was a cost to the state to incarcerate them. And I said, I get that, I understand that, but they don't understand the ravaging effects that the drug dealers are putting in our communities. They don't understand what these drugs and how they're crushing our communities. And so if you're in the business of dealing drugs and that's your main source of income and that's what you do for a living, the sheriff is going to investigate you, and we're going to prosecute you, and we're going to do everything we can under the law to make you pay a price so you'll stop doing that. And the one way I can guarantee you I can make you stop doing that is to incarcerate you. And you can't well, I take that back. Some people can deal drugs from prison, unfortunately, because we have a cell phone problem in our prisons. But that's a whole nother topic. And the cell phone problems are a safety issue and a drug dealing issue as well. So we're doing everything we can to send a message that drugs are bad. I tried a case a couple of years ago where these individuals would get 15, 20 people to go buy 3 packs of pseudoephedrine. He would pay them a little money, go buy 3 packs of pseudoephedrine, and come here. And so what we did was, one of the first cases, we did 2 things. We charged the main drug dealers and the individuals who were buying the drugs with conspiracy. And then we tried them as a conspiracy, which they don't do in state court a lot, but we did a lot in federal court. And we convicted them, and they went to jail for a good long time for their conspiracy to manufacture all this methamphetamine from this pseudoephedrine that they were having these people buy for them. And so that was one way that we took a lot of drugs off the way. So we're making these cases, working with law enforcement, so that we can grab up large amounts and get them off the streets.
I'd like to follow up with the cell phone thing in the prisons. I understand there's some kind of a federal statute that disallows jammers.
There is, yeah.
Is there anything the state can do to bypass that or override it?
Well, it's debated. And if you watch some of the gubernatorial debates, they debated this. Brian Sterling's the head of South Carolina Department of Corrections, and he's been fighting this battle for the last 2 years because he's seen over and over the issues that we've seen with individuals sitting in their cells with an iPhone, making calls, sending texts, doing all these things with a phone, running businesses, illegal businesses from the prisons. It's the #1 piece of contraband in the prisons right now in South Carolina. So I know that he and the governor have been working on special jamming techniques, but it's the Federal Communications Act of 1934, which didn't even contemplate cell phones, has this prohibition in it. And that's what's going on right now. So I know the governor's working hard with Brian Sterling to solve that problem. They've been able to jam in certain ways some of those cell phones, but then they can manipulate it where they have to re-jam it again because they can't jam all the cell phones because you have a right to this Telecommunications Act to communicate. And so it's a complicated issue, and I know they've been working diligently on it to try it, because if we get rid of cell phones out of the prisons, it would be amazing. Now, they don't really have them in the county prisons as much because you don't have a wall that you can throw them over and go pick them up and steal them, or you can't smuggle them in as easy. So in the county prisons, we don't have them as much as in the state prisons.
We have devices out at BMW that can go around and just detect a cell phone. If BMW can do that, why can't our jails do that?
It's a great question. And I don't know. I mean, I know you've got 1,000 people in a prison in all these different cells, and they constantly are looking for contraband, not just cell phones, but weapons and whatnot. I'm sure that they find them every day. And I don't know. That'd be a great idea.
How can you get cell phones in after visitation? Because you're strip searched after visitation. That's what my...
They are very crafty. They have drones that drop them. They put them inside footballs and throw them over the fence. And so they're in an area. And so when they're out walking during their hour outside, they go and get the football and they hide it. They are extremely crafty about getting them in. They sure are.
Any other questions?
After hearing your officer speak, it is very evident to me that resources in Pickens County are limited across the board, and because of that, it is very important where these resources go. So, as far as the drug epidemic, I was wondering if your focus was on users, dealers, or traffickers. Who are you guys trying to go after to make the biggest difference?
Sure. And it's the same, the traffickers are a huge priority because those are the guys that have all the drugs and all the money, and that's where all the violence comes from there. The addicts are breaking the law, but we try to maneuver when they find themselves in the criminal justice system. We have a number of programs available so that they can get, if they want it, the help to get off drugs, get a job, get their family back. And I can give you a million testimonies of our drug court that have been operating as well, where people have come from the lowest of their lives, almost homeless, to a very productive member of society with a very high-paying job. Their family's back, married, kids, and everything is back. But it's just one of the effects of drugs that we have. And it's a terrible effect because once you become addicted, you quit caring about everything else other than that drug. And that has a negative effect on society as well and in our communities.
Thank you.
Sheriff, do you have anything to add on to that question?
What we see is we use the lower folks to move on up, but when we get into our trafficking there, a lot of times we're in a joint operation with SLED or the feds or whatever, so that it's a good working relationship there also. But usually what the crimes we see with just users is just trying to get the next fix. It's the people supplying them that's when they talked about the violence and that comes about. So that's why we try to get all levels, use the base to get the probable cause we need to go on up. So.
You mentioned alcohol and drugs, addiction and all that, how it affects the society, and thank you for doing what you're doing. But do you have like a program for the youth in the schools and like Mrs. Reagan have and all such like that to say no to drugs and such like that?
Yes, we do. Yeah, we certainly do. We have a calendar that we do, Say No to Drugs. We have Red Ribbon Week. We get around to schools talking about the dangers of drugs during October as well, trying to educate. Education in the prevention side is just as important as the aggressive prosecution. You've got to have the education. So, yeah, keeping somebody from ever doing it in the first place is way better. Yeah, than. Mm-hmm.
He's already got a record as long as my arm, and it makes me cry. But thank you for trying what you're doing, and start with them as long as you can.
Yeah.
Elementary. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And we're going to do last question.
Mine's for the sheriff. Totally off topic. I just wanted to see if you had any updates on the new security in our schools since we've got the new security officers now, deputies out there.
And that's a great question. Pickens County's done a great job. They have a school resource officer in every school.
Yeah, every school in Pickens County does have a resource officer, and what we've been lucky, we've had people who wanted to go there. And it takes a special person to be an SRO. I couldn't do it every day. I don't have kids, and that's for a reason. But there are people there who can do that, and so we've had tremendous success. But you're talking about the crime prevention and all that. We see that as a great crime prevention tool because they're seeing the officer, they trust the officer, they come up, they're part of their daily life. And then our officers are able to meet with them and maybe steer them right. So we think it's a win-win for everybody. And it's a joint venture between the county and the school district as far as funding. So we probably a lot of the first in the state to get everybody having our SRO there all the time. So it's worked out great for us countywide.
Awesome. If you'll join me in thanking both the sheriff and the solicitor for their time tonight. As we close, I got a text during the meeting from Senator Rice. He said to tell both of you and all the members that he's sorry he wasn't able to get here tonight. He got stuck in the weather out in Greer, but he wished he had been here. Good to have Henry Wilson with the school board here tonight. We also have one candidate, Carla Kelly, running for school board here tonight. Anyone else? John Jocelyn running for school board, forgot that. Any other candidates that I missed? Any other elected officials? No. Perfect. If you haven't yet, please make sure to sign in so that we can get your email information and we can send you updates about the meetings. If you'd like to make a donation to the party, please see John in the back. And if you'd like any campaign materials, we have Jeff Duncan, the Attorney General Alan Wilson, as well as Walt Wilkins. Please see John or me in the back and we can get you squared away with all that. Thank you for coming out tonight and look forward to see you in a couple weeks.